Paul Edwards is the editor of the Deseret News. Prior to joining the Deseret News, Edwards served as executive vice president and provost at Southern Virginia University, as the president of the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, and as vice president for academic affairs at the Institute for Humane Studies. Edwards holds a doctorate in jurisprudence and social policy and law degree from the University of California, Berkeley. He graduated with honors from Brigham Young University. Edwards and his wife, Margot, are the parents of 4 children and reside in Highland, Utah. Please join me in welcoming Paul Edwards.
Brandon, thank you. Appreciate it. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today. I have a real fond spot in my heart for Snow College. It was just over 100 years ago that my grandfather, Merrill Bagley from Sevier County, well, actually, I think at that time he was in Paiute County, Utah. How many from Paiute County here? Any from Paiute or Sevier? We have some Sevier County folks here. My grandfather graduated from Snow, and I can say quite definitively that it made a huge difference in not just his life, but in the life of his 30 grandchildren, because he acquired at Snow a real love for learning, and although he was a cattle rancher for his entire life in Cousharam, Utah, learning was an important part of the family tradition in the Bagley family. And it really started here at Snow College, here in Ephraim. So, are you trying to film me? Is that okay? I don't want to be, if I was planning to walk around a lot, so they can keep up with me? Okay. Okay. So, who's watching through the film, by the way?
Just students in Richfield.
Okay, hi Richfield. So, I wanted to talk today with you about I want to talk about my industry, the newspaper industry, which is a difficult industry, actually. It faces some real significant challenges in terms of it being able to fund the kind of journalism that we expect from good newspapers. It's because of digital transformation. And I want to talk to you about how the Deseret News, the oldest company, the oldest operating company in the state of Utah, has responded to the challenges from a digital environment that it's made has put pressure on some of the ways that newspapers have traditionally funded themselves. So that's what I want to explore with you today, and invite you to think about what is going to be exciting and important in journalism going forward in the future. And I was just thinking in terms of we were talking about Black History Month. This nice jazz combo came out and played this thing in terms of Jazz History Month. How many of you have seen the movie Selma? Selma hasn't come down to Ephraim yet, huh? Okay. So Selma is an important movie about the march on from Selma to Birmingham, Alabama, in favor of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, led by Martin Luther King. And I'd encourage you to look to see this film. I think it's an important film for our time, and I'd encourage you to look at that and take the reason I wanted to bring this up as I introduce my remarks is the importance in that movie of the press in helping to share the word about what was happening in the South. That it took having reporters look accurately at what was happening and photograph and share the story in order for the nation to wake up and be aware of some of the tremendous injustices that were being perpetrated against blacks in Alabama at that time. and the importance of how voting could make a difference in that. So anyway, Deseret News, the oldest operating company in the state of Utah. In 1850, Mormon pioneers brought a press from Boston on a Conestoga wagon to start printing the Deseret News here in Salt Lake. Wherever the Latter-day Saints settled, one of the very first things they did was establish a functioning newspaper. Media companies have been a very important part of the LDS tradition, if you will. And they brought the press here and started printing the Deseret News. And so we like to say that we are always pioneering at the Deseret News. Deseret News is now part of the Deseret Media Companies, which include KSL Television, KSL Radio, Deseret Book, and something called Deseret Digital Media. And we have as our mission that we want to be trusted voices of light and truth. And this isn't, it came out odd in this somehow. The resolution is off, but it's supposed to say trusted voices of light and truth reaching hundreds of millions of people worldwide. And yet the Deseret News has a particular importance for the state of Utah. There are less than 100 million people in the state of Utah, obviously. But we're part of an important media company that's trying to influence people around the world or reach people around the world. We really see that the vision of the Deseret News is to become the leading news media voice for family ideals in the United States. And I'll show you why there's actually a really important business model associated with that idealistic statement. Let me tell you about my industry. This is in the newspaper business, and let's see, it doesn't want to, there we go. Okay. What you see on this graph is a depiction of what are called, it's advertising revenue for the newspaper business. And if you look at this, this is in inflation-adjusted dollars, so adjusted to 2012 inflation, or 2012 dollars. And it ends in about 2012. So what you can see is in the 1950s, newspapers were bringing in about $20 billion in revenue to pay for their operations through advertising. So that grew to well over $60 million somewhere in not long after 2000. What's the problem with this graph if you're trying to run a business? And I'm serious. What's the problem with this? If this is an indication of where your money's coming from, why should I be concerned? Yes, back there. It falls off. Pretty precipitously, right? It's like, whoa! We went from over $60 billion of revenue as an industry to less than $20 billion in the space of, about 7 years. So can you imagine if mom and dad called and said, if they're the ones that are sending a check to you during the month, and they said, we can only send you a third of what we used to send you. Or if your employer said, I know I was paying you $10 an hour, I can only pay you $3 an hour now. And you have to survive on that. That is the dilemma that the industry is facing. And it has meant tremendous upheaval in the ability of newspapers to operate the way that they have traditionally done that. And you may or may not like what newspapers provide, but when you're in the business like I am, it's like you look at this, and this is a reality. This is not far off, by the way, from what, I'm not allowed to disclose the specific numbers, but this graph, this line graph, is pretty representative of what the revenues at the Deseret News have looked like over this same period. I wish it was $60 billion for us, right? But the relative weight there. So how have we responded to that? Oh, by the way, important on this line, this shows as newspapers have responded by trying to include online revenue, that's what this red line tries to indicate. They've gotten just a little bit of lift from their online revenues. And in the meantime, what we see here with the green line are advertising revenues in places like Facebook, Google, and so on. So it isn't that people have stopped advertising, it's that people have stopped advertising in newspapers because they don't reach an audience in nearly as an effective a way as you might get with Google, Facebook, and other kinds of online opportunities. So we've been involved in transformation of our business. And we actually talk about it that there's a dual transformation going on at the Deseret News. And one is that we have our legacy Deseret News organization, which prints a paper every day. And we have a separate disruptive organization called Deseret Digital Media. And they are working to find a way to innovate so that news is more accessible and relevant in the digital space for you and your friends. And we, both sides need to innovate pretty effectively. What we've done at the Deseret News itself is we've worked to dramatically lower costs. And I'll show you how we've done that. And then we've tried to identify what is the real job to be done by a newspaper, in print or otherwise, that people can relate to today. What is the job to be done by that newspaper? And I'll explain why we've been thinking about too many other things that may not be the job. The other thing is, with Transformation B, don't worry about these terms so much, but we've created a separate management structure for this organization to go out. It says hire digital DNA. That organization hires people from the tech world, not from journalism, but from the tech world to think about how to innovate dramatically in the web. So I'm going to skip over that. Let me just show you how we've lowered costs. When we first looked at what was happening at the Deseret News, we realized that it cost close to about $300 per article for us to put out different kinds of articles that we were doing. Legacy television, it was about $150 per story that was going out onto the web. We combined the newsrooms of television, radio, print from KSL, Deseret News. We brought them all together into an integrated newsroom, and we found that we could reduce the cost per story by about half. We were able to cut in half the cost of those kinds of stories that we were doing. Then we developed a network of contributors from around the world, actually, that could share in some of the things that we were doing. And they can contribute at a low rate as well. Now, there's a question about the quality, right? Are we getting the good quality through a Deseret Connect contributor? but we found that we were able to, for the important stories that matter to Utah's families, reduce the cost of doing stories by about half. And then feature content, movie reviews, restaurant reviews, things like that, we could get for about 1/10 the cost of what we were paying previously for that kind of content. So we significantly reduced those costs. But you know what we did is we didn't just take all that cost out. We redeployed it into some different places. And we actually created a team, and we called this an enterprise team. And the enterprise team does journalism that goes, it doesn't just quickly report what happened today. Instead, it tries to go out and take the best knowledge that we have in the world from leading experts and finding the best sources on the issues and put together a long, deep piece about a particular issue, and I'll show you the issues that we've chosen to cover. But that enterprise team, cost per story is over $1,000 per piece. And you're going to say, well, Edwards, that's kind of crazy. You're worried about these legacy costs being $200 a piece. You work to cut them in half. Why would you go out and spend so much money on this other stuff? And it's a good question. And part of the answer lies in this insight here. The web, the internet, favors things that are narrowly comprehensive. That is, everything about something. Newspapers, by contrast, are variety shows. Something about everything. Okay, if you think about it, people used to shop at kind of general stores or department stores. Today, you can go on the internet, and if you need a particular item, you can go to something that specializes just in that. A few months ago, I had these hinges on some cupboards in my house that needed to be replaced. I found a store that all they sell is hinges. You know, and I could get a much better price there than going over to Walmart or Lowe's for a hinge, right? So the web favors something that's narrowly comprehensive. It gets right at the core of what is most important about a particular topic. Newspapers were like that general store. They tried to be a little bit of everything. So for newspapers to survive in a web environment, if they try to be a little of something and they're kind of mediocre at all of it, people will do something, they'll go another place. I'll give you a specific example. I appreciate that there may not be lots of places to see movies in Ephraim, but if I want to go to a movie and figure out the time and so on, I don't open up the Deseret News and look for the time and what's playing where. I pull out this and open up Flickster. Flickster gives me an immediate access to what's playing, at what time, gives me some reviews through Rotten Tomatoes, and I can even buy tickets right here. I can't do that with my paper. You know, if I'm opening up the Deseret News, I can't do that. So why should the Deseret News try to compete with this extraordinary technology? And yet, we used to have whole sections that tried to do just that. So what we decided to do was to make a decision about how can the Deseret News be not just decent at a number of different things, how can it be the very best at a few things that are wanted, needed around the country. Because if our effort is to reach a larger audience, and if I can actually produce materials that are of interest to a national audience, and they resonate with a local audience, I can get a twofer. I can serve my local audience well, and I can reach tens of millions of people, potentially, with something that we think is the best. And so we did some analysis, and we came up with 6 areas where we felt that the Deseret News could be the best in the world. And those areas of emphasis were around the family, around faith, around care for the poor, values or decency in media, excellence in education, and financial responsibility. And we said, we want to be the best in the world at these 6 things. And that's why my enterprise reporters, we can spend a lot of money on putting together a story in one of these areas of emphasis. I'm willing to spend over $1,000 per story if it is going to be understood and recognized around the nation as being comprehensive and deep and accurate and compelling and interesting on these kinds of topics. And the interesting thing about this is we've actually done analysis of audiences around the country. And we found that there is a hunger and a thirst for this kind of journalism. Journalism that takes seriously concerns of what we call, let me show you this analysis here. This is a little complicated, but if you'll bear with me, I think you'll appreciate the insight on this. We went out and looked at people of faith around the country. So these are people who had expressed that faith is an important part of their lives. And we actually found that there were some segments. We did a segmentation study around different attitudes, not towards a specific denomination, but around different kinds of behaviors and attitudes in these people's lives. And we asked questions about their devotion to religion, the importance of helping others, commitment to marriage, the importance of teaching children, concern about decline of moral values. And what we found is that a lot of these different groups looked very similar to each other around different concerns that they had. They segmented in certain ways, and we found that if you ask this question, do many religions lead to heaven, that you got something kind of different in the way people segmented. But if you were able to get rid of that denominational component in what it is that you might do in coverage that looked at faith, care for the poor, family issues, values in the media, that you could actually reach .56% of the American public with messages that resonated with them. And there's some other analysis that we did that showed that these were topics that were of importance to a large national audience. So, we have transformed the Deseret News such that what we do now is we really go, we really focus significantly on those core areas of emphasis and do a number of stories. And I'll show some of what these look like in a moment here. Our effort is that when you interact with Deseret News products, that you will feel well-informed. This is how we'd like you to feel after you've read the Deseret News. When I'm well-informed, I feel more confident in living my beliefs, so I can make a difference in my family and my community. And here are just a couple of examples of some of the things that we might do. Looking at family issues, here's an article by Lois Collins that looks at attitudes that people your age have about marriage. And this isn't like a feel-good piece. This is a deep investigative report that uses data from national surveys to look at attitudes about career, marriage, parenthood, leisure, and so on, and how it is that millennials prioritize certain things in their lives and why they're choosing to put marriage off later than any other generation in recent memory in American history. The other one here is actually a deep investigative report about, it's a solutions piece that looks at how families can address the issue of heroin addiction. Curious thing about heroin addiction. Heroin, you think of like an inner city issue. Heroin addiction is a suburban female issue in our country today. What's happening is that women find themselves addicted to opioids through prescription drugs initially. They end up finding a cheaper source of opioids through heroin. And we have a terrible increase in heroin addiction in our country among suburban Caucasian women, often mothers, that are wrestling with that issue. How can families address that? This was an investigative report that we put together with the Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University, and part of an award-winning series. So we try to look at solutions, we try to look at what's important for families. In Utah specifically, we look very closely at what matters to Utah's families. This is the cover of the Deseret News as the legislature was opening up its session a few weeks ago. And we tried to identify in what is, through surveys and other things, what's most important to Utah's families and what are the issues facing the legislature that we can go after in a thoughtful and serious way so that families feel well-informed, such that they can be confident in living what's important to them, their beliefs, and make a difference in their families and their communities. I could talk a lot more about the growth in our circulation using this strategy. This is our audited print circulation. I don't know why those have dollar figures on them right now. That's not dollars, those are people, those are subscriptions. But our subscription base since 2010 has tripled under the way that it's audited by the American, by the group that audits circulation. Some of this includes digital app usage. So if you download the digital app in the Deseret News and use it regularly, that starts to show up in how we measure circulation. But the largest Sunday circulation paper in the state of Utah now is the Deseret News, and we've tripled our circulation under these audited measures. We've created a national website that doesn't have any specifically Utah content. So the content I've been talking about that we feel resonates with a national audience that's concerned about faith and family, you can find right now at national.deseretnews.com. And the growth in that has been gratifying. We started that site less than a year ago. It was about a year ago we launched that. We now have over a million unique visitors to that site on a regular basis. And it's grown from 0 to 1 million regular visitors in a year. So Deseret News is now a portfolio of products. It's not just daily print and local online, and the church news, which some of you have been familiar with, but there's a national print edition, the subscription of which actually exceeds our local print edition subscription. There's a national website, there's an iPhone app, there's mobile web, there are iPad apps. So it's a suite of products that are making an effort to reach a large audience. I could talk to you a bit more about the digital transformation side of things, but we have just a few minutes, and I want to take any questions that you might have about what we've been up to. Let me start by just asking, how many of your families use Deseret News products? Online or, okay, get it somewhere? The national print edition is actually available in many of Utah's papers on the weekend now. So it comes as a supplement in a lot of local newspapers, Richfield Reaper, and so on. There's someone back there. You raised your hand. Your family uses, do you get the Deseret News or do you just look at it online? And I'm looking at, yes, you. Yep, yeah. You get the D-News? At your home or?
Yeah, at our home.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Monticello, Utah.
Okay. So all the way down to Monticello you get that. Great. Well, can I answer any questions that you might have? Yeah, Sergio.
Some people have said that eventually newspapers will be online only. Do you think that's the case?
I think there will always be a print component, but there's a real question about how frequent that will be and what that print will look like. So it is interesting to see. There have been some online, the reason I hedge on this a little bit is there are things like there's a very, very good specialized publication online called Politico out of Washington, D.C. Politico is an online-only format. That's the way they began. They now have a very nice print publication for a specific targeted audience that wants it in print. So I think but it's a weekly thing, and it's specialized to the Washington, D.C. community. But these things do different jobs, and for a sit-back experience where you're looking for insight, analysis, context, there's still a lot of people that like a print publication. I'll tell you, though, that iPad replicates that very well. So print is going to continue to diminish. I mean, we just see that. I wish I could say otherwise for particular reasons associated with the fixed costs that I have with printing the newspaper, because if we print less, I still have the same press, right? I have this fixed cost. If we print less, I still have to cover that cost, right? But I do think you'll see a decline in frequency. When that happens, I couldn't guess. Yeah, other questions? Yeah.
Is your company under the LDS Church?
Oh, I should have, yeah, good question. The Deseret media companies are fully owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So yes, we're owned by the church. But we, other than the church news, which is printed and published by the Deseret News, we're not an official publication of the church. So although we want our values to be in sync with those of our owner, you can't say that, I mean, there's not a direct correlation. It's not like I submit my editorials for review to an ecclesiastical leader. We have our own editorial board and so on. We hope that we are honorable in the sight of our owner. But good question. We are owned by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Other questions? Yes, back there.
Just out of curiosity, does Deseret News consider itself not biased news organization? And I'm just curious if what
Okay, superb question. What's your name? Shane? Okay. We very much believe we have a perspective. Now, what we hope we're doing is that we're honoring a commitment to accuracy and trying to be balanced in the way that issues are presented. But we don't shy away from the idea that there is a perspective that we bring that grows out of an editorial policy that honors faith and family as important values in our community. Now, there are a lot of journalistic enterprises that say, oh, you have to be above any kind of perspective. You have to stand above the fray and just report. You can't come with a bias. And increasingly what you'll find, and by the way, this was reinforced recently, very popular voice in journalism schools around the country, Professor Jay Rosen at New York University, he calls that the view from nowhere. And he says, the view from nowhere is a false view. It's never been there. Each journalistic organization has a perspective and a bias. It's important to be upfront about what those perspectives are and let your readers know that. So yes, I come with a perspective that says that family and faith are vitally important to the health of our communities. And when we write from that perspective. We have a view from somewhere, not from nowhere. And probably time for about 2 more questions. Yeah.
Kudos to Lois Collins.
Oh, thank you. Lois Collins is one of our writers. Why do you like Lois so much, sir?
She has pretty hair. I don't know. When I read an article and I think this is good stuff, I look to see who wrote it, and choose it.
Okay.
It's in a column or an article.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit about Lois, because I think that this is interesting to observe. Lois Collins is our designated enterprise reporter for the beat on the family. So she's looking at issues that affect the family. She has won a number of important awards. The American Council on Contemporary Families, an academic group, regularly identifies a top journalist. They give this award out about every 2 years. Lois has gotten that twice and spoken to that group, all family scholars. She grew up in a family, both of her parents were blind. She grew up in Ogden. Her parents studied at the School for the Blind in Ogden. And she's married to a Native American. And Lois just has a perspective about those that are unseen, unheard, less visible in our community, in our midst. And she just has a way of reaching out and identifying those issues in a way that I've never seen in any writer around the country. And she's able to bring that perspective with passion and clarity. We're very blessed to have Lois Collins at the Deseret News, so thank you for recognizing her. I'm going to take that back. Any other questions? Thank you so much for being such a great audience. I'm happy to take other questions, and keep up the good work.